Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening is an action-adventure hack-and-slash released on the PS2 in 2005, directed by Hideaki Itsuno, developed and published by Capcom. It was re-released as Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition in 2006. I played the HD collection port on the PS4. Devil May Cry 3 is a prequel that takes place before the first two games. Dante is visited by a new character who talks about the history of Dante's father Sparda, and reveals that he's working with Dante's older brother Virgil. As an enormous tower opens up from the ground nearby, Dante sets off to find his brother and figure out what's going on. I thought the story was great. You're just given enough exposition and context to know that the events of this game will revolve around Dante and his family's history, making things very personal. However, there's still enough mystery and new characters that always had me wondering how the events would unfold. You'll consistently meet and clash with different characters between missions, keeping the plot moving at a consistent pace, and ending with a satisfying conclusion. The new characters were great. They all had their mysteries and relate to the story and each other in an interesting way. The only character I wanted to know more about by the end of the game was Virgil. You can gather his motives and desires from his strong actions and serious and noble nature, but he doesn't talk too much during the events of the game. The younger Dante that's portrayed in Devil May Cry 3 is funny and well written the majority of the time. He retains the carefree nature of DMC1's Dante, while expressing more energy in his actions and writing than ever before. The only thing I'd nitpick about Dante's character in this game is he's missing a bit of complexity compared to DMC1's Dante. He leans heavily into the funny and carefree nature to the point where the other sides of his character don't show as strongly as they did in DMC1. During the more serious moments of DMC1, Dante would react to things with a bit more tact, whereas DMC3 Dante would usually say a witty one-liner and move on. I don't think most people would notice or even complain about this. I think my nitpick just comes down to preference. I personally enjoyed DMC1 Dante's character a bit more as he's portrayed with a nice balance of strength, carefreeness, seriousness, due to Dante's emotional past and in the game story events of DMC1, creating a more grounded character. It's also important to mention that DMC3 Dante is also a younger one, taking place before the events of DMC1, so these quirks make perfect sense in context to the game. I enjoyed the setting. The world was fun to explore and map out, areas were focused and connected. While most of the game takes place in the tower, I felt there was enough visual variety when traveling to the tower, exploring the tower, and the events that take place after the tower. Devil May Cry retains the Gothic architecture from the first game, and it does wonders to immerse me. Each room contains plenty of details, making them distinct and identifiable from one another. The map includes photos of each room, which I thought was something very useful that I never see in other games. Having a photo picture of what each room looks like on the map is great for those who are more visual learners. In the third quarter of the game, I felt it reused areas a little too much, while not adding anything worthwhile to further flesh them out. There was only one point early in the game where I got stuck. A staircase you use in the tower falls apart, halting your progression, and after further exploration you find an item called the Soul of Steel. Its description reads, "The essence of a powerful and fearless soul. Its possessor need not fear hell nor oblivion." That didn't communicate to me at all that I was suddenly now able to walk across a large pit where the staircase fell apart earlier. I only figured it out by accident while trying to jump in the pit, after exhaustively exploring the rest of the map multiple times around first. There's a nice blend of combat and exploration. The game's divided into missions providing checkpoints and guidance to the next goal in the game. Despite the mission structure, the areas are always connected. You can at any time revisit previous areas to look for hidden items, weapons, firearms, and challenge rooms. These bonuses reward you for your exploration and make Dante stronger. Hidden challenge rooms exist in the game, rewarding players that explore every part of the map and reward them with more content and items that will make Dante stronger. Combo statues can be found that require you to achieve a certain combo rank in order to receive the health upgrade inside. Puzzles exist in the game, but I hesitate to call them puzzles. However, I don't hate that they aren't traditional puzzles. Most of the puzzles are combat focused, that remix the combat in a minor way. Other times puzzles require finding key items and using those key items to open a new path. I think it's good that the puzzles don't take away from the focus on combat, while adding some context to the exploration. Devil May Cry 3's combat feels really good, and it's the perfect evolution of the first games. It takes everything that worked and built upon it with new moves, weapons, and mechanics. Combat's slow but deliberate, attacks feel weighty, satisfying, and engaging. Enemies are clearly designed around your offensive and defensive options, requiring your constant attention. I found the combat to be understandable. You can make it by with just performing simple combos, but the game rewards you naturally for playing around with the combat and discovering new ways to make combos. It feels rewarding discovering what combos into each other and slowly stringing together longer and longer combos. By changing the timing between attacks, different attacks and combos can be executed. By the game relying on timing rather than complex commands, you'll have more consistent execution while still having to focus on combat in order to perfect your timing. The other commands require you lock onto an enemy and move the control stick either in front of Dante or behind him. I like that these commands are also simple, however, due to the camera, what's in front of you and behind you is constantly changing. On one hand, that's fine because again the inputs are simple, and you'll need to stay focused and engaged with the combat in order to input the correct direction. But on the other hand, sometimes I would miss an input because I wasn't exactly sure where the control stick needed to be considered in front or behind Dante. Rolling works similarly. Rolling is weighty but useful, and I enjoy how tactfully it's used here. I like how you can't over-rely on rolling. You need to be very careful with your timing and which direction you roll in, as it doesn't get you out of attacks for free. It's good to roll during close-up combat, where you need to quickly maneuver around the enemy, or far away to react to strong projectiles. While focused on an enemy, you must press left or right in order to roll. This is the same compared to how it worked in Devil May Cry 1, so I have the same type of criticism. You can only roll left or right. If you try to roll forward or backward, you just jump instead. I found myself jumping during times I wanted to roll because the direction I was holding wasn't correct. Due to the different timing of the jump versus the roll, it usually resulted in me taking damage. Jumping can be done easily by just pressing the jump button, so having it also be tied to rolling confuses me. I would like to see the jump button be separated from the roll command and have the ability to roll in more directions. I got half of a solution to this problem in Devil May Cry 3's new style system, with the Trickster style that provides you with a few more movement options when selected. Devil May Cry 3 adds styles into the combat that can be selected at the beginning of every mission and at a divinity statue in the levels. These styles can level up from 1 to 3 in order to learn more moves. You'll start with Trickster, Swordmaster, Gunslinger, and Royal Guard. Devil May Cry 3's implementation of the style system is a brilliant way to customize, personalize, and flesh out the combat options, while keeping it relatively simple. All style abilities are mapped to a single button and have the same additional inputs that the melee weapons have for consistency. Styles can greatly change Dante's approach to combat. Trickster allows you the ability to dash on the ground or in the air with invincibility frames, and also lets you run up walls. Swordmaster is what I chose for my playthrough, and it lets you perform melee sword combos in the air, and the ability to cancel attacks into a dash, to follow up with even more attacks. Gunslinger lets you shoot multiple enemies and charge up your firearms for stronger attacks. Royal Guard lets you block attacks in order to counter and redirect that damage. Devil May Cry 3 lets you instantly switch between 2 preset melee weapons and firearms. Once you learn the combos for a single weapon, you can mix and match and even animation cancel attacks to extend combos in unique ways. Devil Trigger is a temporary powered up form Dante can take once unlocked. Fighting enemies builds the Devil Trigger meter, and activating the form will consume the meter. Devil Trigger provides a faster running speed, extra damage, faster attacks, new abilities, healing, and other advantages. Devil Trigger is extremely useful but not overpowered. You still need to be careful when and where to use it to get the max amount of benefit from it. The Devil Trigger designs featured in this game for Dante and Virgil were created by Kazuma Kaneko, who is known for creating a lot of demon designs in the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona series. Given my biased love for Kaneko's art, these Devil Trigger designs are my favorite, as you can see Kaneko's signature style and how it relates to his other designs like Varuna from Digital Devil Saga. The lock-on reticle brought from Devil May Cry 2 is a useful tool to communicate who Dante is currently locked onto, what direction Dante will swing toward, and also functions as an enemy's health bar. It's a real subtle and real clever way to not take up additional HUD space. That being said, it was a little too subtle, and I had to be told that the reticle was a health bar. It would be nice if there was additional deeper red bars and animations in the reticle that shakes when an enemy takes damage. That would communicate better what the lock-on is for. I'd also be happy if the tutorial page explained that bit of information. You'll receive a ranking for each combo performed on an enemy, and are rewarded with more currency the better the combo. You can take the currency to the shop and buy more consumable items, attacks, health, damage, and Devil Trigger upgrades to make Dante stronger. This scales the progression naturally and seamlessly alongside the player's skill. For someone who's struggling with the game's mechanics, they can spend their currency on helpful consumable items that heal, refill Devil Trigger, and damage enemies, and continue to practice with the existing moves and abilities. Players more familiar with the game will perform better in the earlier moments, earning more currency to spend upgrading and expanding Dante's moveset, opening up the combat a lot sooner. I'm still not sure how I feel about unlocking new moves. I understand the need to not overwhelm the player and give them new abilities and attacks to look forward to. But these games are at their best when you're building upon your existing skill set by performing your intrinsic execution, rather than having to grind to buy or unlock stronger abilities and options. Progression in the game is a bit mixed. Most weapons and a couple new styles in Devil May Cry 3 are given to you after beating bosses, providing consistent, interesting rewards for progression through the main game. All the weapons feel really unique from one another, and in turn create new combo opportunities. I don't like how long of a grind the rest of the progression systems were. Styles were a great addition, but you only get one style to level 3 during a casual playthrough, so it discouraged me from trying other styles as I put so much time into leveling up the style I chose at the start. Getting new weapons is exciting, however you need to dump a lot of money into each weapon just to keep them in line with the weapons you're currently using. This discouraged me from trying new weapons as I already put so much money into powering up the weapons I was currently using, and it would feel slow switching to a new weapon that doesn't have those upgrades. You could argue that this could encourage multiple playthroughs, choosing to use and practice different weapons on the next playthrough, which is fine, but the sense of reward diminished when I realized it was a bad idea to use new weapons and styles that I just unlocked. It would be nice if weapon abilities costed more, but were shared between all weapon types, like having every launch back input attack being unlocked at the same time, instead of needing to buy it for every weapon. Enemies were very engaging and came in many different varieties. There are some similar variants, but they all grow and scale in abilities, so that they scale with the player. Most of the enemies had wildly different strategies and priorities needed to defeat them, keeping combat really fresh. All of the bosses, minus 2, were really well designed. Bosses are challenging, engaging, and will test your reflexes, but they're always fair and can be mastered. They require you to focus and ask you to recognize patterns and tells. Bosses can have unique optional strategies to figure out that can help you master the fights. I felt so smart during the Chariot Greyon fight when I figured out I can jump onto the chariot to do more damage, or during the first Cerberus fight when I found the best positioning and found attacks that hit 2 or 3 of the heads, doubling and tripling my damage output. There were a few reoccurring boss battles, and just as I complimented them in DMC1 I will here in 3. This time it's one main character and a second side character for the special edition version of the game. While you fight this main character multiple times throughout the game, you both get stronger and it fuels that power fantasy the game builds in both its writing and gameplay. I noticed just how much better I've gotten during each battle. The fights got tougher and each time they felt different enough to be enjoying and challenging. This resulted in a beautiful climax moment at the end of the game. These different strategies for enemies and bosses would have provided great importance and utility to the returning enemy files, but sadly the files this time aren't as robust as DMC1's files. Devil May Cry 1 contained files on enemies that would provide more information the more you interacted with them. If you found a critical parry on an enemy, a description of the timing performed would be added to that enemy's file. I love this aspect of Devil May Cry, as you had a living encyclopedia that encouraged exploration and new interactions with enemies you encounter. Helpful mechanical information would be found within the game, instead of needing to look up external strategies. It showed the players the amount of careful consideration that went into the mechanical design of each enemy, and shared that knowledge with the player as they play through the game. The files make a return in Devil May Cry 3, however most entries contain a small amount of flavor text, maybe with small tidbits you'd probably already figured out within the first few seconds of combat. The files did help in one situation with the Blood Goyles that multiply when hit with melee attacks. After reading their file I learned that they were weak to firearms. Dullahan's description's helpful about its weak spot being behind it, but that information is already perfectly conveyed in its design with a bright crystal on its back, and I didn't need to look at the file to learn that. Immediately after selecting a new game, I was presented with the option to choose gold or yellow, and I had to look up what that meant. If you die in yellow, you start the entire level over, and using a gold orb respawns you at the last checkpoint, not where you died. If you die in gold, you'll be sent to the previous room's checkpoint, and gold orbs will respawn you on the spot. These options need descriptions on the main menu. I have no idea why there's no description in-game. Being able to choose whether or not you want tutorial pop-ups in the game is something small but much appreciated for multiple playthroughs. The camera remains fixed in Devil May Cry 3, but you have enough minor influence between having more angles, having those angles automatically try to track the action, and being able to influence the camera's movements by locking on the enemies and using the camera control stick. While still not perfect, I absolutely love this compromise, as the game can keep its artistic fixed camera angles, while still being able to influence the camera in order to try to provide as much info to the player as possible. Enemies will still be off-screen plenty of times, so it requires you to be aware of not only the combat, but your surroundings in order to succeed. Devil May Cry 3 contains hard rock and metal during moments of combat that fit really well. They are loud and energetic, and it pumps me up and gets me in the mood for combat. In the moments where combat takes a back seat to the story and exploration, the soundtrack contains songs that are quiet and ambient in order to craft a scary and empty atmosphere. Overall, Devil May Cry was challenging but fulfilling. I played on the gold setting while trying not to use any consumable items, and my first playthrough ran about 12 hours. In Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition, once you finish your first playthrough with Dante, you'll unlock the ability to play as Virgil. This is great as I wanted a bit more from Virgil's character after Dante's playthrough, so it's nice to see this campaign. By the end of Dante's campaign, Virgil's motivations can be assumed due to his actions and personality, and while that's enough, I was intrigued and wanted to learn more about him. However, there is only a small handful of new cutscenes with Virgil, as he simply goes through the same levels as Dante. The story structure and campaign definitely feel like side content, due to just playing through the same game with a new character. I'm just a bit disappointed, as I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to go above and beyond and flesh out Virgil by explaining more of his backstory and why he wants to achieve his goals. Though as it stands, I'm very satisfied with what's here currently, considering how fleshed out and varied Dante is, with all the different styles and weapons that encourage multiple playthroughs with Dante providing plenty of content. Virgil plays very differently from Dante. He can't change styles, but to make up for it he has 3 melee weapons at all times that he can freely swap between, and has a warp that can teleport him in place, toward an enemy, toward the air, and toward the ground when in the air, giving him a really unique way to move around. His projectile is unique, and he learns more unique abilities and skills much different from Dante. Devil May Cry has a huge number of difficulty modes. After you complete the game on normal, you'll unlock hard mode, and after completing hard mode on Special Edition, you'll unlock Very Hard, Dante Must Die, and Heaven and Hell. Each harder difficulty changes the damage received and dealt by Dante, along with more gameplay changes like boss and enemy attack patterns, and even the ability for enemies to enter a Devil Trigger state. I like the combination of these changes, as the latter changes can remix the gameplay and how you approach strategies and encounters. When you finish a playthrough, you'll have access to the completed levels at any time and can replay them with your current upgrades and equipment. Every level at every difficulty has a ranking system, with S rank being the best. Once you decide you want to take the first steps toward mastering the game, getting S ranks will be your first and last goal. It's not an easy challenge to take, but if you enjoy the combat, it'll keep you busy for countless hours. The Bloody Palace also makes a return from DMC2 in DMC3 Special Edition. Bloody Palace is a battle arena where you can see just how long you can last against waves of enemies and bosses, making for a short and highly replayable mode due to how good the core combat is. Something I wish was in all the DMC games is an arcade mode of sorts that would be available on startup. A mode that has all weapons and abilities unlocked from the beginning, a clearer focus on score and performance, with a limited number of continues. I think this would solve the problem I have, so that you could provide the main campaign as an introductional and intended experience for those wanting to play through Devil May Cry 3, and a more pick up and play experience where it cuts out the grinding and unlocking, and the only thing keeping you from beating the game is your intrinsic skill to learn the mechanics and execution of the game. Due to the request of Capcom USA, the version that Japan got during the original release of Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening, was easier than the version the rest of the world got. Once the Special Edition was released, all versions' difficulty settings were in line with the original Japanese release, with more features added. In the original US release, Dante deals less damage and receives more damage. The yellow format's death system is forced, while the Special Edition allows you to choose between yellow or gold. If you die in the standard or select yellow when it asks you yellow or gold, you start the entire level over, and using a gold orb respawns you at the last checkpoint, not where you died. In the Special Edition, orbs respawn you on the spot, while dying sends you to the checkpoint. A game is developed with a certain difficulty in mind. When you alter the difficulty and mislead players with it, not only are you messing with the original's vision, but it harms accessibility, as you could scare away potential fans as their perception of what the game is could change. Devil May Cry 3 supports difficulty settings, so the better option would have just been to have had all the difficulties unlocked from the beginning. I don't recommend you play the original PS2 release for this reason alone. The re-release of the Special Edition in 2006 reverts these changes back to the original Japanese difficulty, while providing harder modes as options. This Special Edition is the version used in the Devil May Cry HD Collection, which is the version I played for this video. Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition includes the Bloody Palace, Virgil's Campaign, a fixed difficulty setting to mirror the original Japanese release, and an additional boss fight with Jester. The Nintendo Switch release is a standalone version of the game released in 2020. This version includes a freestyle mode that lets Dante instantly switch styles on the fly. It lets you switch between all of Dante's weapons freely, and adds a co-op mode for Bloody Palace that lets you play as Dante and Virgil. It's nice to see that with each new re-release of Devil May Cry 3, they add new gameplay tweaks that, while minor, give the players more and more options to play how they want, and extends the possible playtime. After playing and reflecting on my experience through the first 3 titles in the Devil May Cry series, I truly believe that 3 is not only my favorite of the 3, but it's the best of them as well. This game is a perfect sequel. It uses Devil May Cry 1 as a base, and takes only what worked in 1 and builds upon it perfectly. Devil May Cry 3 has a satisfying core combat loop, with mechanics that build off of each other the more you play around, with your growing list of attacks, weapons, and abilities. The environments and characters introduced are fun, unique, and full of inspiration. With combat, exploration, replayable modes, challenges, and different character playstyles, by the time you beat the game for the first time, you're just scratching the surface of what it has to offer. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more like it, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. I also stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/RyanBeardy. Follow me on Twitter at RyanBeardy, and I have a Discord with the link below.